What if Paul Atreides were still alive?
I know you said that you never left Arrakis. The interim, the limbo was not a time that you spent, sitting back and doing nothing. But did you feel maybe more freedom, more confidence, stepping back into the world because of the response?
Yes and no. The thing is that the first part was well received, but the second part brought a lot of new challenges, and we all walked at the beginning into this project feeling confident, and that confidence eroded very quickly because when we realized what I had written with John Spate, it was very ambitious and required it was a much more bigger challenge than part one, technically. There's more technical challenge because of the action sequence. In part one, there's maybe 1 or 2, and then there were 6 or 7, so there was the amount of them, and I was envisioned to shoot that all in as much as possible on location, and to try to shoot as much as possible on camera, so that was challenging for the crew. Yeah.
Tell me about going back to Wadi Rum and sort of finding that yourself in that cinematic legacy too.
Wadi Rum is for me. It's to go there is paradise. It's like it's a place that has a sacred quality to it. It has a soul. You feel, as one of my colleagues said, when you walk into Wadi Rum, it makes you believe in God. I mean, it's like it's a place that brings a lot of humility into yourself as a human being, and that impact of the landscape on ourselves. Actors felt the same. It's very inspiring for us as filmmakers.
Obviously, Paul has to grow up a lot in this film, and Timothée too, in a way I think you've spoken about. But tell me just about this sort of challenge, the task that he took on, and sort of having to step up and be Paul at this stage.
Yeah, but first of all, the Timothée that walked on set on part one was not the same on part two. Timothée had learned a lot about filmmaking in between both movies. He grew up. He was much more mature, much more assured. He was much more of a leading man in part two. I felt that it's normal. In part one, he was like it was the first time he was on movie that scale, surrounded by a lot of movie star, but in part two he was the one leading and did a tremendous job to bring Paul's tragedy to life.
I know with the first one you talked about watching him and sort of getting emotional at him acting with Charlotte Rampling and just sort of knowing, oh, this is right, this is working. Did you have any moments like that here?
I knew in part one, I mean, not with Timothée, because Timothée I knew, I had just made a movie with him, I know he was perfect for the part. I will say that when I did the camera test with Austin Butler as Fade Rota, I had my body relaxed, because when you do casting, it's always, in some ways, some kind of gambling, and you know if you're right the first day of shooting. I trust Austin. I was amazed by what he's done on camera and on other movies, but it's just, when you see it finally coming to life, it's like a big not relaxation, but relief. Sorry, I was wrong.
Of course, he's terrific. It's unlike anything I've ever seen too. That character. Tell me about trying to figure out how to visualize riding the sandworm, because I know you've had so many of these things in your head since you were 13. And
I wanted the audience to believe that it's real, that it's dangerous, that it's not easy, that Paul has talent, but still it's the first time he does that, so he's a bit clumsy, but it's heroic at the same time, and to find that balance, develop the technique. I had to imagine, okay, if me, Denis Villeneuve, I have to ride a sandworm, how will I do it? And I came with a theory, and I draw it. I had like diagrams and things, and I explained the behaviors of the worm to my crew. I explained the behavior, how I frame the technique, and then with the storyboard, I explained to the crew how we will shoot that, and how we will finally achieve those shots technically. But all that was theoric. I mean, it's like there was a lot of people who suffered a long time under the sun to brought that to life, thanks to them.
Nothing fancy.
it's a mixed emotions because it's like as Hans Zimmer told me before we did part one that he said to me, looking me in the eyes, "Is it a good idea what we're doing to try to bring to life dreams that we had when we were kids? Is it meant to fail?" And in some ways, so there's part of the movies that when I look at it, it's close to the dream. Other parts are new because it's an adaptation and I had to make choices and to distort the reality of the book in order to make it fit into a film format. So it's like a joy and pain.
Yeah. So you haven't been able to sit back and sort of watch it as the
no,
fan.
No, the movie, no. I don't have that distance at all. I just know that the movie has a soul. And I'm happy that one of the challenge we had, and I don't know if I had mentioned this, but it's like the one of the goal we had was to make sure that if people who had not seen part one will be able to enjoy part two, that the movie will be kind of autonomous. It's more rewarding to watch part two if you have seen part one, but if you don't, you absolutely can understand the second part.
What are the pressures you're feeling right now, or the stakes? I mean, I know you've spoken about the possibility of continuing the story.
Listen, as I grow older as a filmmaker, I try to focus on the process, how the people will receive the movie. So I gave everything to make it as good as I could, and now I know the movie has a soul. I'm gonna let it walk alone in the world, and I hope it's gonna be well received. But I have no control over that. So that pressure, I try to breathe and step back about that. I try to, yeah.
You've said that the book was the Bible in the first one. Did you instill that in the new cast members as well?
Absolutely. It's the only reference that I mentioned. I didn't want to reference other movies. I didn't want to. I really, my dream was that people will read the book and be inspired by the image that Frank Herbert created. I wanted us to be, in a way, invisible as much as possible, that it will be an homage to Frank Herbert's work.
The first film obviously did really well. It did enough to greenlight the second one, but now cinemas are back. Oppenheimer did, almost $1 billion. I mean, are you feeling a more energized theatrical fervor?
The thing is that the first movie came out, as you rightly said, in a very difficult environment. It was like just at the end of the pandemic, and it was not over yet. People were afraid to go back to the theaters. The movie was coming day to date, and in the United States, the conditions were, it cannot be worse to release a movie. And still the movie did a decent box office, but I will say that the environment is absolutely better, but the movie is stronger too. Part two, I strongly believe that part two is a much more entertaining movie than part one, which is more meditative. Mm-hmm. And we were following a boy discovering a culture. Now we are with a boy avenging his father, falling in love. It's more of a action movie than part one. And so there's entertainment aspect of it that I believe could reach a broader audience, definitely.